The murmurs inside Lakeview Arena that Sunday morning felt different, restless, electric, almost expectant. Before anyone knew why, a ripple of confusion spread through the audience when security guards suddenly converged near the third row. It wasn't until the tall figure of John Kennedy, a soft-spoken former community councilor known locally for his outreach work, began rising to his feet that the room fell fully silent. Moments earlier, Kennedy had attempted to step onto the stage after the worship set to something forbidden without clearance, and Pastor Joel Osteen, noticing the movement, had quietly spoken into a security mic. What came next stunned the entire congregation. The guards moved toward Kennedy, hands raised in caution. A woman in the audience gasped. A man whispered, "What's happening?" Kennedy didn't fight. He simply raised his hands, and not in surrender, but in aching desperation. "I just needed a moment," he said, loud enough for only the front rows to hear. "I've lost everything this week. Please see broken bar. I just needed prayer." Two ushers hesitated. One security guard, younger and clearly conflicted, paused with his hand near Kennedy's elbow. The congregation shifted uncomfortably, watching a man who looked broken as his suit wrinkled, his eyes rimmed red, his breath unsteady. No one knew that, just 4 days earlier, he had buried his brother after a sudden medical crisis. And still no one moved, and not even Osteen. For a full 5 seconds, the megachurch felt frozen. But then, something in Osteen's expression changed. Whatever caution or misunderstanding had driven his initial decision evaporated from his face. Without saying a word, he stepped down from the stage, gently touched the nearest guard on the shoulder, and signaled for everyone to stand down. Security dispersed. And then, in a moment that felt almost cinematic, Osteen wrapped John Kennedy in a long, deliberate embrace. The audience exhaled in unison. "Son," Osteen said with a crack in his voice, "you don't have to fight to be seen here. You're already loved here." The mic picked up the line. A few people cried openly. The band, uncertain, held their instruments in stillness. Kennedy's knees buckled, and for a moment Osteen helped hold him upright. Then, guiding him to the center of the stage, Osteen addressed the crowd in a trembling but powerful voice. "Church, how often do we push away the very people who need us most? How often do we assume danger when all someone is carrying is grief?" A woman in the choir wiped her eyes. A man in the back whispered, "Amen." Kennedy tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Osteen gently rested a hand on his back. "Tell them," he whispered. Kennedy inhaled shakily and faced the audience. "My brother died this week," he said, barely able to steady his voice. "And the last thing we talked about was a broken bar this church. He told me to come here today, said I'd find hope. I wasn't trying to interrupt anything. He paused. "I just needed someone to pray with me." The silence that followed was thick with emotion. Osteen lifted the microphone again. "We're going to do more than pray with you," he declared. "We're going to stand with you." For the next several minutes, the entire church, 1,000 strong, bowed their heads as Osteen led a prayer not only for Kennedy, but for anyone silently grieving in the room. People who had come expecting routine worship instead found themselves part of a deeply human moment, raw, compassionate, unforgettable. When the prayer ended, Kennedy remained on stage, visibly steadier. Osteen placed a supportive hand on his shoulder and addressed the congregation once more. "Let this be a reminder. Before we judge, before we assume, before we push someone away a broken bar, let's choose to love first." The crowd rose to their feet in applause, not the excitement of a performance, but the recognition of shared humanity. A moment of grace, born from a moment of misunderstanding. As Kennedy walked off stage, flanked not by security but by volunteers offering comfort, the atmosphere in Lakeview Arena had transformed. People smiled gently at strangers. Some hugged. Others whispered prayers. That morning became the talk of the community, not because a man was almost removed, but because a man was embraced. And as many later said on social media, it wasn't the service. It was a reminder that compassion, when chosen over fear, can change everything.